Hi YouTubers! Welcome to my ever popular Top 5 Tips videos. In this third episode, I'll show you how to ice a multi-layered cake and get as professional with it as you want to be. If you like these kind of videos, please subscribe to my channel to see a few more of them in the next couple of months. I'll be showing you the tools I use and give you a few suggestions you may not have heard before. When I first started icing layered cakes, it blew my mind that people could get cake to look so straight and perfect. All of my attempts were like lopsided, melting disasters that had a laughable hashtag of nailed it, not. But over the years, I learnt different techniques that I use on a daily basis. Some icings require different application methods. So for example, if you're icing with cream cheese as opposed to a soft chantilly cream, they just react differently to the palette knife. But by the end of this top 5 list on how to ice a cake, I hope to make you better icers and frosters. Okay, so let's go.
Actually, it's probably the best option.
Tip number 1. Now, these first 2 tips are not about the actual icing. It's about your equipment and your prep work. Here's a quick look at the tools of my trade when preparing to ice a cake. I have at the ready my cake layers, non-stick square. In my case, I use a wet paper towel. It works just as well and it's cheaper. A cake board, the serrated edged knife, turntable. So this is a very basic one, probably the least expensive. What's good about this one is that it has a button on it that allows you to tilt the cake. Now, this is the Rolls Royce, I think. It's what we use in the cake shop, but the good thing about it is that it's really heavy and it turns quite well. If you don't have a proper cake turntable, you can easily make do with a round Lazy Susan, or even an overturned bowl with a plate over the top. Just make sure that the base of the bowl is flat and wide enough to allow you to turn the plate without making your cake wobble. A palette knife, now I've been using one since the beginning of my career, and her name is Gertrude. As you can see, she's falling apart, but I'll not abandon her after what she's given me. An ice cream scoop, a piping bag, and a clean, wet cloth wipe. If you have all of these tools, you're ready to go. Tip number 2. In my video titled The Best Red Velvet Cake Recipe, I mentioned how to get the straight layers on your cake before even thinking about applying the icing. You must make sure that each layer is both equal in thickness and completely level. Using your serrated edged knife, slice off any uneven sides. This is the best way to start a successful icing job. Wasteful, you say? I think not. There are 2 things you can do with it to ensure it doesn't go to waste. You can bake it off and crumble it to use for garnishing the cake, or you can add a few scrumptious spoonfuls of icing and turn that waste into cake balls. Tip number 3. Have your icing as airy and pliable as possible without being too warm. What I mean by that is the icing has to be able to spread easily and cover the cake crumbs immediately without too much back and forth effort of your palette knife. Otherwise, you risk ripping the cake to pieces. If the icing's too cold, it'll be impossible to achieve a smooth cake finish. Too warm, and the icing will drip and droop and melt everywhere. You can't achieve crisp, smooth corners like that. It's better to put the icing back in the fridge, wait until it cools down, and start over completely. Tip number 4. Now that your icing is the perfect temperature, you'll need to decide which icing technique to use. Now, these terms are highly technical, so I'll explain each one of them very clearly. Technique number 1 is called the scoop and spread method. This is done by taking an ice cream scoop and measuring out your desired amount of icing. Then, spreading the icing outward in tiny, wide, swooshing motions until your icing works its way to the outer edges of the cake layer. This is the way we ice cakes at the cakery because it's fast and we know we will always have the same amount of icing in each layer. Technique number 2 is called the squeeze and spiral. Woo-hoo! This is done by taking a piping bag with chosen round tip, filling it with icing about half full, no more. Otherwise you'll lose control of the bag and it'll come right back at you. Twist your bag and loop it around your thumb for the ultimate control. So, starting from the middle point of your cake, squeeze a continuous length of icing and gradually rotating the turntable to create a spiral that goes outward until you reach the outer edge of the cake. Then you smooth it with a palette knife. I usually find that this is a good method when I'm decorating big, tall, layered cakes for weddings because they demand perfection, and each layer of cake and filling must be exactly the same when you cut into it. However, this way does take a little bit more time because you're going to need to refill your piping bag several times if your cake is really large. Okay, folks, last but not least is tip number 5. Now that you've got what I call an Oreoed cake, you'll need to do what's called in the cake world as a crumb coat. This essentially seals and protects your lovely moist cake from its natural predators of the outside world. It also makes it much easier to apply your final finishing of icing. If it's really hot in the cakery, then at this stage, we chill the crumbed cake for up to 30 minutes to allow the cake to set. Then we finish it. The cakes get a chance to settle in their skins, so to speak, have their crumbs knit properly together, therefore making it easier to handle. So there you have it, folks, my top 5 tips on how to ice a cake. Hey, you, thanks for watching almost to the end. I'm going to reward you with a bonus, how I finish the cake. In the next few weeks, we'll be posting the video that a lot of you peeps have been dying for. And that's my recipe for the Devil's Food chocolate cake featured in my video, 5 moist cake tips that work every time. If you have any questions on icing, please post them in the comments below and I'll reply as soon as I can. If you liked the video, please click on the thumbs up icon. Oh, and don't forget, please subscribe to my channel. See you later. Bye. $1 million.